Hey, happy snowy day, everybody. This is chapter 65, The Whale. The whale swam along the surface of the ocean, keeping our robot safely above the water, gently moving her away from the rough waves. Brightbill couldn't believe what he saw. Once the shock wore off, he fluttered down to the whale's back and leaned over his mother. There was no life in her eyes or in her body, so the goose did the only thing he could think of. Click. Roz's eyes began to glow. She uttered some human noises, and then in the language of the animals, the robot said, "Oh, Brightbill, I'm so happy to see you." The goose squawked with joy and hugged his mother's face, but she did not move. She couldn't move. The robot had lost the use of her limbs. There were a few tense moments and a few nervous glances, but as the sun beat down and the wind rushed over her, Roz felt her body drying out. Slowly, gradually, power returned to her arms, her legs, and then she sat up and she hugged her son. Brightbill breathed a sigh of relief. "Mama, when you disappeared below that water, I thought you were gone forever." "So did I," said Roz. "As I sank deeper and deeper, the ocean squeezed my body tighter and tighter. I lost control of my legs and my arms. The last thing I remember was a huge shape swimming toward me, and then I automatically shut down." "That huge shape was a whale," squawked the goose. "We're riding on its back right now." A low moan rumbled up through the whale's body. She splashed the water with her fins and took long, wheezing breaths and sprayed mist high into the air. Roz paid close attention to the whale's behavior and understood what she was saying. The whale's name was Coral, and she was thrilled to meet our friends. She explained that a flock of geese had flown over the bay and regaled the coastal birds with the amazing story of a wild robot and her son, a goose. The coastal birds shared the story with the fish and the dolphins and anyone who would listen. In time, the story spread to every creature in the bay. When Coral saw the robot rowing and the goose flying overhead, she knew it had to be Brightbill and Roz. So she swam behind them in case she could be helpful, and it was a good thing that she did. As Coral ferried our friends across the bay, the waves grew smaller and the coastline grew larger. Houses poked out from the trees, sunbathers relaxed on the rocks, boats motored away from the piers. With so many humans around, Roz had to be careful. She lay flat against Coral's back while Brightbill flew ahead and scouted out the coastline. The goose directed the whale to a quiet, empty cove, and soon the robot was standing on dry land again. Roz asked if there was some way she could repay Coral for saving her life, but the whale was just happy to help. She winked one of her enormous eyes, and then she sank beneath the waves. Our friends marched inland, feeling lucky and grateful, but they thought of the journey still to come. Their good feelings were gradually turning gloomy. Roz had nearly died crossing that bay. At some point, to get back to the island, she would have to cross an entire ocean. And now chapter 66, The New Land. Zoom! Vroom! Shoom! Automobiles were gliding up and down the road, passing fields and forests and clusters of houses. None of the passengers had any idea that a robot and a goose were watching from the weeds. Our friends had been hiding there for some time, waiting for traffic to clear. But the automobiles kept coming. Roz noticed a drainage pipe that was crossed under the road. The pipe was dark and grimy, but the travelers were getting very desperate. Moving through this new land was difficult. There were humans and robots and buildings and roads now more than before. Roz and Brightbill traveled far out of their way in wide circles just to avoid the small towns. As the days passed, the scenery looked more familiar to Brightbill. He remembered flying over these lands on his first migration. He knew the towns would only get larger and closer together the further they went. It would be so much faster to sneak through the towns than continue to go around them. So as night fell, Roz put on fresh camouflage, and with her son watching from the sky, she crept into a town. This is a good spot for me to stop, but I also think it would be a good place for you to start making an illustration to go with these two chapters. Think about what that whale must have looked like. And Roz was on its back, and then Brightbill is flying overhead. Or maybe you can make a picture of Roz getting into camouflage again as they're going through a town. I wonder what her camouflage looked like.